Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at, well, a really intense piece of source material. It's a formal resolution dated September 27, 2025, from a group calling itself the Azerbaijan People's Parliament, or Azərbaycan Xalq Parlamentinin.
And it's quite something. It's not just, political shouting. It's presented as a serious legal argument. The core of it is this claim that the original 1995 Constitution of Azerbaijan, its principles, its whole essence really, has been systematically violated and destroyed.
Destroyed, that's a strong word. They're basically saying the fundamental agreement between the government and the people is broken.
That's the claim. And importantly, they argue it wasn't broken by some sudden event, but through a series of, legal changes presented as legitimate referendums.
Okay, so our job here is to unpack that argument as laid out in the resolutions, staying impartial, of course. We need to trace the specific constitutional changes they mention and understand how they claim these shifts move the power structure. So where does this People's Parliament start? What's the foundation they build on?
They begin by really emphasizing the status of that original 1995 Constitution. They stress it was adopted by a national referendum back on November 12, 1995, and its role, as they see it, is crucial. It's the supreme law, the social contract, and the guarantee of national sovereignty. That's their starting point.
Right, establishing its legitimacy before arguing it was undermined. And they immediately point to specific articles, don't they? The ones they say form the basis of their whole case.
Yes, exactly. 3 key articles that define that state-citizen relationship. First, Article 1, Section 1, the idea that the Azerbaijani people are the only source of state power.
The ultimate authority rests with the people. Got it.
Second, Article 2, Section 2, how do the people use that power? Through things like free elections and, significantly, referendums.
Okay, so the mechanism for popular will is defined. And the third one?
That's Article 6, Section 3. And this one's critical for their later argument. It basically says that seizing power, appropriating it, is the absolute worst crime against the nation.
So people are sovereign, they express sovereignty through votes and referendums, and stealing that power is treason. Now, the resolution does admit the original 1995 system was a presidential republic, which usually means a strong executive. How did they say that initial power was kept in check? What were the safeguards?
They mentioned 2 main things. One is just the general oversight role of the parliament, the Milli Majlis. But the really crucial structural check, the one they focus on, was in Article 101. It contained a very specific limit. One person cannot be elected president more than twice.
The 2-term limit. That's a classic feature in many republics.
Precisely. They argue that single sentence was the key guarantee against power becoming permanent in one person's hands. It enforced rotation.
Okay, that makes sense. A strong president, but not a president for life.
Yeah.
So the resolution then shifts gears, right? It starts detailing how these checks were allegedly dismantled step by step. They talk about 3 referendums over, 14 years?
Yes, this is the real narrative core of the document. They lay out a sequence. It starts with the 2002 referendum. The main change they flag here was to Article 105. That article dealt with who takes over if the president can't perform their duties temporarily or resigns.
Okay, presidential succession. Who was originally in line before 2002?
Originally, the power transferred temporarily to the chairman of the Milli Majlis, the Speaker of the Parliament, seen as more of an institutional figure representing the legislature.
A different branch of government.
Okay.
And the change in 2002.
The change shifted that temporary succession line. It moved from the chairman of the Milli Majlis to the prime minister.
And the prime minister is appointed by the president, correct?
Correct, an executive appointee. So the resolution argues this wasn't just a small technical tweak. They claim it fundamentally shifted the line of succession away from the legislative branch and placed it firmly within the executive branch, being directly under the president's control.
I can see their argument there, moving it from a potentially independent check to someone appointed by the person stepping aside.
And the People's Parliament draws a direct line from this change. They argue it created the legal pathway for what they call a family internal transfer of power. They specifically note that Ilham Aliyev became prime minister in 2003, shortly after this change, and then president later that year, using this very mechanism.
So they see this first referendum as, like, preparing the ground, setting things up for later moves.
That seems to be their interpretation, laying the foundation, you might say, removing one of the original supports in the constitutional structure.
Okay, groundwork laid in 2002. Then we get to the 2009 referendum. This sounds like the one the resolution considers the really big hit.
Oh, absolutely. This is presented as the knockout blow to the original Republican ideal. The target here was that specific phrase in Article 101 we mentioned: the same person cannot be elected president more than twice. The 2009 referendum just deleted it, removed that restriction entirely.
Wow, so just taking out that one sentence. The resolution argues that fundamentally breaks the whole system. How does that connect back to Article 6, the bit about seizing power?
Their logic is pretty direct. Removing the term limit destroys the principle of rotating power. It immediately, they argue, creates the legal possibility for someone to hold the presidency for life. In their view, this effectively took the ultimate right to replace the leader away from the people. It shifted the state, they claim, from a republic with fixed terms to something else, paving the way for what the document calls a family clan system.
That phrase again, family clan systems, obviously loaded language.
Yeah.
What exactly are they implying when they use that term in the resolution?
Well, based on the context, they seem to mean a system where political power and high office aren't determined primarily by elections or merit, but are passed down or distributed based on direct family ties and close personal allegiances. They're suggesting that state power itself becomes treated like a kind of private property or inheritance for a specific group, which they argue is the ultimate appropriation of power that Article 6 forbids.
Right, contrasting a political succession with what they see as a dynastic one. So 2009 allegedly provides the ability to rule indefinitely. Then comes the 2016 referendum. How does the resolution frame this one? As locking things down?
Essentially, yes. As formalizing the structure needed for this alleged dynastic system, two key changes happened in 2016, according to the document. First, Article 101 was changed again, this time extending the presidential term itself from 5 years up to 7 years.
A longer term between elections.
Oh, right.
And the second change?
The second was arguably even more significant structurally. A whole new article, Article 103.1, was added. This created the position of vice president.
The vice presidency. Lots of countries have that. Why do they see this specific addition as the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, for their alleged family clan system?
It's about how the vice president gets the job. It's by direct appointment by the president, not through an election. So the resolution argues this new post formalized the ability to transfer presidential powers and potentially succeed to the presidency via appointment, completely bypassing the voters. It effectively institutionalized a way to name a successor or deputy from within the ruling circle, solidifying that alleged dynastic control.
Okay, so the narrative they build is quite meticulous. 2002 adjusts succession rules, 2009 removes term limits, 2016 extends the term and adds an appointed VP slot. But playing devil's advocate, couldn't these just be seen as, modernizing reforms, maybe attempts to create stability? Does the resolution acknowledge that possibility?
It does, actually, but it dismisses it. They have this specific section you could call the masking allegation. They argue that these really fundamental structural changes, removing term limits, creating the VP post, were deliberately presented under the banner of reform.
Masked. How so?
They claim these core changes were bundled together with other less controversial amendments. Things like adding nice-sounding clauses about, say, social guarantees or boosting youth opportunities. The alleged effect was to sort of hide the power-concentrating changes amongst more popular but constitutionally less significant social clauses. So the public focus might be drawn to the positive-sounding bits, while the fundamental shifts in presidential power and succession slip through. They see the reform language as a deliberate facade.
That's a serious charge, claiming intentional deception in the legislative process. It definitely shows they're aiming for a deep structural critique. And this detailed breakdown leads them to some pretty stark conclusions, doesn't it?
Extremely stark. Based on this historical timeline they've constructed, they basically declare the entire constitutional order broken. Their key findings, the ones they present publicly, are blunt.
Let's run through those main conclusions. They sound pretty dramatic.
First, they state flatly: the essence of the 1995 Constitution is gone, destroyed. They argue it's no longer a document protecting the people's rights, but has become, and this is their phrase, the Aliyev family's personal power charter or statute.
Yeah, a personal statute. And they directly connect this back to those initial articles, Article 1 and Article 6.
Directly. They claim the principle of separation of powers is eliminated, with all power now concentrated in one place. They argue the people's sovereignty, Article 1, has been hollowed out, made purely formal, and they even allege that the results of the referendums themselves, the very tools Article 2 says people use to exercise power, were falsified.
Falsified referendum results. That's a huge accusation.
It is, and it leads to their ultimate conclusion. that state power was appropriated, directly violating Article 6 and turning the state itself into the effective property of the ruling group.
So, having reached these conclusions, what did the People's Parliament actually decide to do? It wasn't just an academic paper, right? It was a resolution calling for action.
Correct. It ends with a clear plan, 3 specific action items aimed at a complete reset. First, they resolved to annul all the constitutional changes made via those 3 referendums, 2002, 2009, and 2016. They declare them null and void, contrary to the state's and people's interests.
Okay, step 1 is basically hitting rewind, trying to restore the original 1995 structure with term limits and the old succession rule.
That's the immediate goal, yes. But they go further. Step 2. Begin preparations for drafting a completely new constitution for Azerbaijan.
A whole new constitution, not just fixing the old one.
A fresh start, it seems. And step 3 is logistical, tasking their leadership, the Presidium, with setting up a constitutional commission to write this new draft, subject to the Parliament's own approval.
So it's a 3-stage plan. Annul the changes, draft the new constitution, and create the body to do the drafting. That's a roadmap for potentially revolutionary change, framed entirely through a legal critique of past constitutional amendments. What really strikes me digging into this source is how it highlights that massive political shifts can be argued based on seemingly small changes in legal text, moving a comma, deleting a sentence, adding an article.
That's definitely a key takeaway for you, the listener. You can see how changing Article 105 on succession, or just deleting the term limit clause in Article 101, or adding Article 103 to have for the VP, how these specific tweaks are presented as fundamentally altering the entire balance of power in the state, moving it, they allege, away from a republic and towards something else entirely.
And it puts that core tension right out in the open, doesn't it? Is a constitution this sacred foundational social contract, almost unchangeable in its core principles? Or is it just a legal document that can be amended over time, even if those amendments drastically shift power? Especially if they're done via referendums, supposedly the voice of the people.
That's the fundamental conflict this document throws up. It explicitly cites Article 2, the people exercise power through referendums. Yet it argues the results of those very referendums led directly to the appropriation of power from the people, violating Article 6.
So the democratic mechanism itself is accused of enabling an anti-democratic outcome, in their view. It really makes you think. What safeguards does a system need if the very tool designed for popular consent, like a referendum, can potentially be used or alleged to be used to concentrate power and undermine the foundations of that consent? That's a complex question.
It certainly is. It goes to the heart of constitutional design and democratic stability. We've definitely covered a lot of ground unpacking this resolution today.
We have indeed. Thanks for walking us through that. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.